my philosophy of manifestation is spirituality meets that personal growth and development piece. So it's about the present moment. It's about how you are vibrating, how you are feeling, what your attention is focused upon. But it's also the embodiment of an elevated, grander version of yourself as you remain present in the moment.
You know, a lot of the things that we manifest require replacing old programming with new programming, right? But sometimes that programming is our own doing, sometimes it's our parents, sometimes it's society. But when the program is so big and it's so deep and it's so heavy and it's so wrought with controversy, it feels like even a bigger feat to undo the damage that was done since birth. So many people have been told their whole lives, almost as a anytime someone's mom is upset, they're like, listen, I went through the worst pain ever to birth you, I brought you in this world, right? Or like, you know, I almost died giving birth to you. And it's like the birth process is weaponized. It's imbued with so much fear and, you know, all we hear and all we see in media, right? Yeah. TVs, films is, this is the worst pain of your life. This is something, even if you really want kids, this is something to fear. And that fear creates your experience.
Welcome back to the Manifested Podcast with Kathleen Cameron. Today, I have a multifaceted woman here that I'm going to interview. Her name is Yaya DaCosta. She's an actress, producer, spirituality, what did you say?
Practitioner.
Spiritual practitioner, a birth worker, does so many things, and beautiful, beautiful energy. So thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I love this itself it's so spontaneous and also so perfectly aligned. You know, your thing is manifestation and just, you know, we had no plans to do this, but I literally just said, like, I need to start speaking more. Yes. I need to, you know, I used to do speaking engagements for colleges and stuff like that. I've been to, you know, the TED conference in Vancouver and been asked why I'm not speaking. I have been invited to do people's podcasts and just not, for whatever reason, right? There are the like real reasons and then there are the fake reasons. The fake reasons are, oh, we didn't get the schedule together, or, you know, I don't have time, or I don't know what I want to say, right? But the real reasons are, there's something that you're scared of.
And you're avoiding.
Yeah. And so this is like brand spanking new. And this is the second podcast since I made that decision. And I'm really excited. So thank you so much for having me and being part of the very thing that you talk about.
I'm so happy. And it is the power of this work. And so even that example, how you decide to make a decision to open yourself up to something different and opportunities align and you show up and you just follow that intuitive action. So you guys are probably like, what are you talking about? Well, Alexi Archer, that was just on the podcast, is a very, very dear friend of yours. You've known each other since, how old were you guys? 2?
2 and 3. Yeah.
And Alexa was coming on the podcast and she sent me a message. She said, I just got an intuitive hit. I think it would be wonderful if you wanted to interview Yaya. And I went, okay, yeah. And I went and took a look at your stuff and I was like, yes.
Wow.
Like I want to hear about you and what you've manifested in your life. And now that I'm sitting here, I'm like, I can feel the vibration. It's very empowered, very firm, divine energy. So when we were standing outside and we said hello, I asked you to tell me a little bit about you, not the roles you play, but about who you are and what you do. Let's see if you can say it to me again. Like you said it out there. It was so beautiful.
I should have written it down. I said, I am an embodiment of the divine feminine, dedicated to uplifting her through magic, beauty, and art. And so for me, art comes out in many different ways. I'm an actress. I am also starting to write scripts, right? So the stories that I'm either creating or choosing to be a part of and say other people's words, those roles must be aligned with a purpose that has become really, really clear to me. And I also started a head wrap line, and I'm calling them crown chakra adornments. You know, they're Reiki attuned. It's an experience, you know, and so just trusting that all of the different things that I love to do have a place in this same integrated, cozy space that I call Yaya.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. I wanted you to say that because
It's not quite what I said, but yeah.
very, very close. Very, very close. It was beautiful. So we're here talking about manifestation. My philosophy of manifestation is spirituality meets that personal growth and development piece. So it's about the present moment. It's about how you are vibrating, how you are feeling, what your attention is focused upon. But it's also the embodiment of an elevated, grander version of yourself as you remain present in the moment. So manifestation, obviously, is the physical observation of a desired state in the 3D world. So for you, what would you say would be one of your biggest or your most proudest manifestations? Or you can use the word accomplishment, but it doesn't always have to be an accomplishment. But bringing something into the physical, what would you say?
I didn't know. I had other things that I thought I was going to say, but I was just like, this is the thing. It just came to me.
Yeah.
And it's so big because, you know, a lot of the things that we manifest require replacing old programming with new programming, right? But sometimes that programming is our own doing. Sometimes it's our parents. Sometimes it's society. But when the program is so big and it's so deep and it's so heavy and it's so wrought with controversy, I'm talking about birth, it feels like even a bigger feat to undo the damage that was done since birth. So many people have been told their whole lives, almost as a like, anytime someone's mom is upset, they're like, listen, I went through the worst pain ever to birth you. I brought you in this world, right? Or like, you know, I almost died giving birth to you. And it's like this, the birth process is weaponized. It's imbued with so much fear and, you know, all we hear and all we see in media, right?
Yeah.
TVs, films this is the worst pain of your life. This is something, even if you really want kids, this is something to fear. And that fear creates your experience. That fear creates the interventions and the, you know, emergencies and all the things, all the horror stories that we hear. The reason that this is probably my proudest manifestation is because I spent so much time and energy. Now, obviously, I'm an actress, right? So once I started showing, my options were limited anyway.
Yeah.
I did do a role playing a pregnant woman. But I had time. So I went on a silent meditation retreat for 10 days. I wrote a list, you know, to the person I was living with at the time of the things that they liked to watch on TV that I requested not be watched while I was around. I made rules for myself about how I was going to move through the world and, you know, not get frustrated, not get, you know, if I was in a position that was stressful and that I felt irregulated, I would leave because I wanted to communicate to my child that this world you're coming into is beautiful, it's supported, right? It's not all this stress, because that's what I experienced. You know, my mother didn't even know she was pregnant with me until she was 5 months.
Wow.
Okay, and got an x-ray thinking her back hurt. And then, you know, having that shock and not having enough time to prepare, there were so many circumstances in my family's life at that time that I think contributed to a youth of complete dysregulation, you know, Tourette syndrome, tics, and, you know, which I learned to control through acting and dancing, just a lot of stuff, right? And so I know that started in the womb, and I was committed to doing everything that I could
so the baby could have that different experience.
Yeah. And then I exposed myself to beautiful birth stories. I read Ina May Gaskin's books, you know, who has like the farm in Tennessee. I started, you know, even though I was already a birth worker for a few years then, I started in 2010. And I was just like committed. And so I watched this documentary called Orgasmic Birth. I saw these women in tubs, you know, making sounds that we hear in other places. And I was like, This is possible? What? No, I didn't have an orgasmic birth, but just opening a new neurological pathway.
A new idea in the mind.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just knowing that that other extreme is a possibility allowed me to land somewhere in between, right? I had a pretty ecstatic birth. You know, my midwife did not even know. She did not believe the baby was coming until the next day. And she was like, there's the head. And I was like, really? Because I was waiting for it to get worse.
Wow.
So
yeah.
I manifested an ecstatic birth because I spent so much energy rewriting what that story, would be.
This is so interesting. And it's the power of energy and vibration and attraction, because I was a labor and delivery nurse for 5 years.
Amazing.
And so those 5 years, I saw the most traumatic births. I saw intervention upon intervention upon intervention. And so I ended up having my first delivery with Mason in hospital. I had an epidural. It was very traditional. And after I had that birth, I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to have the same experience. I'm going to have something different. So here I was, a labor and delivery nurse who was like, I'm getting a midwife and I'm having a home birth. And so, so my second daughter was delivered at home on the floor in my master bedroom.
Me too. I was on the floor in the bedroom.
Energy, baby.
I love it.
Yes, and what was so beautiful about that is I learned about my strength. I learned about my power, my resilience, my ability to handle pain and to push through it when it, mine wasn't like, oh, wait, is it getting worse? I was like, oh, this is bad. I don't think it's going to get any worse. But the most beautiful thing about that is that after she was born, her sister came in, we watched a movie in my own bed and ordered dinner for the family. And it just really normalized the whole experience.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
With just doing what you want, right? This whole like eating ice chips thing is like, what? I had morning sickness for the whole 9.5 months. I barely could eat what I wanted. And as soon as he came out, I had a voracious appetite. I was like, give me like my friend was there. She just made lasagna. I ate half the pan. Like I was so happy. It was immediately the hormones just, everything just shifted. He did the whole like army crawl up, found the food, went right to eating. I mean, it was incredible. That doesn't happen in a setting that is not made to support you. So I have worked in that setting, and it's just very different from supporting women at home. That's my preference.
And how this actually relates to like manifestation as a whole, right? Is that we exist in a world that tells us that things have to be certain ways. And it's like this box that we're in. And so what you did is you decided to leave that box and decided to create your own experience. You created your own reality of this birth and what that was going to look like for you and for your child. I think it's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really
The last thing I'll say is that my first thought wasn't, is it a boy or girl? I didn't even know, and I didn't look until the midwife asked. I was like, oh. But my first thought was, oh, I can't wait to do this again. And it was so clear. Now, I haven't done it again. But
And that was 11 years ago, you said?
Yeah. Well, 12. Yeah, he's 11 and a half now, so 12. But just knowing that that's possible, and then I can bring that in, not in a directive way. I just submit to whatever the mom wants, but energetically, I'm holding space for that possibility for her.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Yaya, so you do a lot of spirituality and you aid people in spiritual practices. How do you think that coincides with manifestation, with like bringing things into the physical reality? Do you think you have to be spiritual? Do you need to be doing rituals? Like, how do you feel about that?
I love her. I love a ritual. I'm like,
So do I.
what's going on today?
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it's necessary. I know, I've seen people manifest things who are not spiritual. I think if I look at teachers that I've had, people who have inspired me, who have manifested the most, they are very spiritual people.
Yeah.
They're very spiritual people. And it's across the board. They can be Christian, they can be Buddhist, they can be traditional, African religious. It can be all across the board, but there is a recognition of a power that runs through us, that guides us, and that unites us. If I know that everything that I see is a miracle, and I am one with everything that I see, then I too am a miracle. And I can, create or co-create miracles.
Yeah.
You
Beautiful. I think for me too, what I noticed in my journey was like I manifested some good things leading up to. I had my spiritual awakening in September of 2019. And so I was a registered nurse, obviously, for 12 years. And I manifested like the dream, like hopefully you make $100,000 a year, have a couple of babies, live in a house, have your own car, have a pension and benefits. So like that's the life I created. I manifested what I thought was possible for me. But in September 2019, after I had my spiritual awakening, when I allowed myself to actually recognize a power outside of myself, I used to think I was a human, like just a human, just a body. So when I started to believe in something greater, something outside of just my human existence, that's where magic started to happen for me. That's where true manifestation started to show up. And I would look around and go like, did that really just happen? And with ease, So I think manifestation can absolutely occur without it, like you said. But I think the spirituality allows your magic to become even greater, your intuition to become even greater, your ability to impact people far greater. So I love that you do spirit work.
And the feeling too for me, especially as an Indigenous, person, is like there is this very beautiful connection to ancestry, which we call ancestral veneration, which when we remember that we are never alone, when we remember what it took for us to even be here, that reminder alone can empower us in our most difficult moments.
I love that, Yaya.
Yeah.
So what is next for you? What sort of impact or life do you want to create? What do you want to do next with your life?
I do love acting. I do. And I know that, as I awaken to the increased like specificity of my purpose, it's clear that the roles that I can take are kind of narrowing. I'm really only interested in doing things that align. And that's why also I'm starting to create more art. What do I want to see? And like art is so powerful. There's that conversation like the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
Does life imitate art? Does art imitate life? I think it's both. And I know that art is so powerful. And I think it's, as an artist, my responsibility to put that artistic energy that's so powerful towards the world that I want to see.
Yeah.
Right. And so I am about to play women that uplift the divine feminine, right? That show us in our power.
Yeah.
Past, present, and future.
I love that.
Versions of that. There's so many historical figures that people just don't know about because no one's made a movie about them, right? Let's shine a light on those queens.
I can't wait to watch.
Just shining a light on so much. I'm manifesting the life of my dreams, and the details of which I'm a Scorpio. So if you hear hesitation, it's like, don't say too much. Wait a minute. We're not there yet. Because some of it, that is true too, right? Like protecting our manifestations until it's time to talk about them. I think, at least for me, that's also been a part of my process, because there's so much noise.
Yeah.
And so many different, especially when you're in the public, there's going to be duality. There's going to be the people that support you, and then they're going to be the haters, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me just continue doing my thing under here, and then when it's ready,
we will just watch and see. So you have become such a beautiful example for other females that want to go after their dreams, their heart, to show up, to be authentic, to be genuine. We've got a couple more minutes. What would you say to the girl at home that's listening that is a little more reserved or shy and maybe isn't as bold or brave as you've been? What would you say to her?
I wasn't always this way.
Yeah.
You know, it took a lot of work to tap into my courage. I'm still deepening my courage. You know, I made a post on Instagram that took, well, we didn't have Instagram then, but like it was like 21 years in the making. You know what I mean? Like, and that was super liberating. And I'm like, wow, what would I say? I would say, do the hard things, because there are such rewards that come from that. Know that if there is a desire placed on your heart, it comes from a version of yourself that already knows that you did that and that you crushed it. You know what I mean? So just trust that. Trust and do it.
Aw. Beautiful, beautiful words. Beautiful words. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate
for
it.
having me.
I appreciate, Source Energy for putting us together in this.
I mean, Alexi was like,
Yeah.
do you want to do the podcast? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this was truly divine. Truly divine, and our stories just align so much. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for watching, for tuning in whatever capacity you are. And I just want to remind you again that the limit does not exist.